So Brody, what is it that you think marries wrestling and extreme music?
I would say aggression, physicality, and a need for violence.
Welcome back to another episode of Last Words here on The Pit. And this week we get into the Venn diagram that is wrestling, hardcore, and metal with none other than God's Hate vocalist and wrestler, Brody King. Brody, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Brody, you're on double duty here, right? What is it that you think marries these two cultures together, wrestling and hardcore or wrestling and extreme music?
I would say aggression, physicality, and a need for violence.
Would you guys agree with that?
I grew up watching wrestling. I got into metal not too long after, so it's hard to say if it was the same, but I also came up in the 80s where like every wrestler had a metal theme songs, like the Rockers and Ultimate Warrior, and even Hulk Hogan's song is kind of metally, kind of rock. I don't know. It just seems natural, very natural.
Yeah, like every wrestling riff is just like some hard like pseudo Pantera riff.
So Brody, what came first for you, metal or hardcore or wrestling?
Professional wrestling has been in my life since I was, before I can remember. My dad was a fan of it, made me a fan of it. So I grew up watching it, until I was about 13. And then I kind of fell out of it and found like punk and metal music.
How did you find it though? Because for me personally, I found metal in some ways through wrestling. Like, I remember watching as a kid and like Drowning Pool's Bodies. And that's the first place that I heard it and thinking it's such a cool song. Like it's just so anthemic and so awesome. Was that a little bit of a gateway for you, and anyone else here have a similar experience?
So I got into punk through skateboarding, just skating with the kids around my neighborhood. And they all listened to like the Punkorama Epitaph compilations. And I remember going to a Warehouse Music and asking for skateboard music. And the guy there was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And over the loudspeaker, I could hear something familiar. And I was like, I want this CD. And they went and took it out of like the CD changer. And it was a Bad Religion, Stranger Than Fiction. And that was like the first CD I ever bought. And then like in junior high, that was when like Korn and Slipknot and Limp Bizkit were like super popular. So that like kind of piqued my interest. But I mean, even before that, my dad was into like Black Sabbath, AC/DC, like more like the older metal stuff.
So Brody, you came up, in the hardcore scene, punk scene, as did I. And in New Jersey, like me and Zena, we came up and it was all about what was going on in the pit. And if you know anything about the hardcore scene pit, it's a lot different than the metal scene, right? Metal scene is a lot of pushing, a lot of kind of, just slam dancing, as it were, in the 90s. But the hardcore scene, metalcore scene pit is very violent, a lot of kung fu, a lot of throwing fists and hands. You're a really big dude, all right? And you're exactly the kind of dude, if I saw in the pit, I'm like, I'm going by the bar to hide with the with the moms who are like waiting to pick up. Were you like a pit enforcer? These wrestling moves in the pit? How you retire from the pit so you don't get anyone injured or yourself injured? What's the deal with that?
So I was very, very much a person in the pit at all times for multiple bands. And if you grew up in New Jersey, then I really hope that you got to witness some like Fury of Five or E-Town Concrete or like Sworn Enemy shows. I can only imagine.
God forbid. So we played with all those bands.
Oh, there we go.
We never played with Fury of Five, but I know those guys, and actually I filled in for Fury of Five. I did a show.
That's incredible. I mean, like Stickman is like the best hardcore frontman of all time as far as like being an entertainer and a musician at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I was definitely very active in the pit. I would definitely say, I'm not gonna make any promises, but as of right now, I'm probably retired. And that is until like that riff catches your ear and you just can't help yourself.
Do you think you would be a retired mosher though if you didn't have your outlet as a wrestler, or do you think you'd still be throwing down and using that kind of as your physical outlet?
Oh, I'm sure that I would still be participating in some sense. I mean, I have two kids. I'm 34 now, so it's like I don't know if I have as much in me, but I still got some in me.
I think we all still have that in us. We still have that spirit of getting down the pit. I actually want to talk about something that Doc brought up, a really good point about the metal hardcore rift and like the metal hardcore fuel, like feud. I mean, I don't know that I see this so much anymore. Maybe sometimes I cultivate this because I love metal and just never was able to really quite get or understand hardcore. But like, what are some of your guys, like all of you, like what are some of your experiences of seeing some of this divide? And how do you feel about it? Do you care either way? Do you think one is superior to the other?
There was so many like legendary beatdown crew type shows, and I remember being young and just being kind of like, wow, that's pretty serious, right? Whereas the music I feel in metal is a little bit, I don't want to say a little more of the focus, but has a little bit more attention. I feel like hardcore, you come for the scene a little bit, right? There's a little bit more of kind of a vibe, and it's just like knuckle dragging nastiness sometimes, and I love it. Like honestly, like there's something kind of visceral about it, right?
I just had Scott Vogel from Terror on my podcast, and we talked a lot about, kind of things that personally turned me off from the hardcore scene at a certain point. Because in New Jersey, it would just, when God forbid would play, it was just so violent. And like little girls would get punched in the face or jumped, or kids would get, someone be in the pit moshing with like a ring with like spikes on it, and some kid would get sent to the hospital. And then the crews that started getting bigger, and people got killed. It just wasn't, and to me it got a little rough because it felt like it wasn't really about the music so much as it became about like, I don't know, bullying people, and so, and then when you kind of start going out and playing these more metal shows, with the hardcore thing has almost this horseshoe thing sometimes where there's literally no one really up front watching you play. It's just people moshing. So it almost feels like disconnected sometimes, but then you play another show where it's like everyone's up front, rocking out, jumping up and down. And so I kind of like, I don't know, part of me still loves it and thinks it's really sick. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know, I have these really bad memories where like, you can go on the internet right now and watch a God forbid show where we had to stop playing a show because this girl was getting beat down. It's still part of me and I still love it, but as long as it's within like reasonable means. But I think that's kind of changed in the last few years with the newer scene hardcore bands, where it seems like it's more about stage diving, it's more about having fun, it's more about singing along, which to me is what it should really be about, is focusing about the music and the songs, not just hurting people.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with you that now is much different than when I kind of grew up going to shows. Like it was much more like people intentionally trying to hurt other people or whatever. And Scott's like a good friend of mine, and I've been to my fair share of Terror shows where it was like Terror playing on a mixed bill with like a metal band, and it was like hardcore kids versus the metal kids. End of story. And like I'm a hardcore kid, like to the core. So it was like there's a lot more scene unity, and like hardcore kids stick together a lot more, whereas like a metal kid might not really know what's going on. He might be by himself, and like he gets like smacked in the face, not really know what's going on, especially in that time was very like hostile between the two. But I think it's gotten to a point where it's a lot more tame, and it's not so much about going to a show to fight somebody or whatever. And like I think that people are starting to understand, oh, hey, like, metal bands are sick. Like, and like metal and hardcore can definitely coincide together.
Brody, I actually want to circle back for a second to a point you just made, where you said that you feel the difference between hardcore and metal is that there's more of like a camaraderie between hardcore, and there's more of like, this feeling of like them having each other's back. But see, at the same time, you also just described a scene to me that goes there with the goal to hurt each other in the pit. Whereas with metal, the rule is if someone falls down, you pick them up. So I had to say, I think it's metal that's really the one that's got that brotherhood, because they go there, you're a stranger, doesn't matter what crew you're with, what squad you're with, you're down in that pit, someone's picking you up.
I might be a completely different person if I was, 20-year-old Brody that didn't get to go punch my friends in the face and get punched in return. That was like a next level aggression release for me that I think that I needed as a young man.
Well, it's called consensual violence, right? So as long as it's much like No, it's serious. Much like a boxing match or anything like that, it's agreed upon what it is. And as long as everyone kind of understands what you're getting yourself into, then it's cool. And then, but usually the problems come up when someone does not understand the rules.
Exactly.
And there's miscommunication because under any normal circumstances, if someone's swinging their arms and kicking you, you're like, yo, you just swing an arm and hitting me in the face. Well, how's that different from punching me in the face? Not much different. So
kind of a form of brotherly love.
Yeah.
One of the best parts about the wrestling experience is the walkout music. What's your favorite? I guess it doesn't have to be metal, but if it could, most metal, rock-oriented walkout music. And if you could have your own, if you had your dream walkout music for yourself, you know, obviously, Brody, you probably already have this, but maybe there's a dream one you don't even have. But for each person, I'd like to know each one, your favorite one historically, and also your dream choice of walkout music.
My favorite walkout music of all time, and I think maybe just because I've replayed it in my brain a million times, is probably Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just the sound of the glass breaking, and then the jun 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 jun, and then that dive bomb in the middle of it. It's just iconic, and it's hard.
Classic. And so what's your walkout music? Is it your band, or do you have something else?
So my walkout music is God's Hate. If I was to have a dream walkout music, so when I was on the Independents, I used to use Cannibal Corpse, Scourge of Iron with my tag team partner, Tyler Bateman. So maybe Cannibal Corpse to write something, or like Dying Fetus or something like that. Something just super ignorant and hard.
Okay, that's very hard. It's funny because when I was thinking about it, because I didn't even think about this before I did this, but while I was asking the question, I was like going through my head, and the first thing I thought of was Hammer Smash Face. I just feel like that would be the perfect music to just Ultimate Warrior, where not slow. You don't slow. You run to the ring. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you know,
yeah, like right when the blast starts, you just run as fast as you can.
If you have long, I don't have long hair. I may have to get like a dread wig or something, and you get and start windmilling. This is just something I'm going to put to the floor. I have this dream that maybe like Hulk Hogan's theme song, "Real American," should replace the national anthem. Listen, this song gets you fired up about America, and that's really what a good national anthem should do. It's just like hell yeah, man. Like, hell, America got me a flag, got me an eagle, got me a denim jacket, you know, some boots, might build something.
I like hate Hulk Hogan. I mean, I hated him before he was like a racist, but even after that, I still agree with that should replace the national anthem.
It's too good. It's just listen, it's a good. I have to look up who wrote that song, but they're great people. Do you guys remember this song, or just
Doc, start a petition. I will sign that. And by the way, this whole time is just making me think of that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode where they kind of had the same train of thought and then
Rock,
do
Flag, and Eagle,
wrestling thing.
Rock, Flag, and Eagle. Hulk Hogan, got in trouble for saying the N-bomb or something like that, and then the actual national anthem has like verses removed that have like slavery in it and stuff. So it just all comes full circle, We're just keeping it consistent.
The American way. That sounds like America to me.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan's a real American.
Well, that's a wrap here on The Pit. And Brody, where can people find you, and where can they find your band and your wrestling?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BrodyXKing. The band does not have social media. We kind of went the more punk approach on that. But you can go to godshate.us or at Closed Casket Activities, which is our record label. And yeah, God's Hate self-titled will be available everywhere on all platforms March 12th.
Awesome. And how about you, Doc? Where can everyone find you?
Find me on Instagram, Twitter at Doc Coyle, or check out my website, www.doccoyle.net.
How about you, Zena? We're going to be them heels together. Where can we find you?
Oh yeah, we'll get our routine ready. At Zena Coda everywhere on socials. And what about you, Katie?
And you guys can all find me at Merciful Kate on Twitter and Instagram. Well, folks, if you can't get enough of us, don't you worry. This was just a bite-sized serving. If you want the full meal, head on over to every podcast platform to stream the full, uncensored, edited of The Pit's Last Words. And you can find us on all social media at We Are The Pit.